The venue for NDC campaign against the free SHS remains a suspension as NAGRAD intervenes on his behalf.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Bond, Gas and Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready and nationwide. It has now become a battle for the hearts and minds of the senior high school student, with the Ghana Education Service firmly opposed to any form of campaigning on the campuses, but with some strong resistance from the main opposition party, the NDC. The former leader of the party and former president of the country, John Dramani Mahama, is today opposed to any form of ban on campaigning in the schools. And in fact, it calls the MPP an intolerant party for suspending the headmaster of the Timpani Senior High School, where an NDC executive was seen recently campaigning against the free SHS. Today, we are learning of a directive issued by the Ghana Education Service to all schools across the country, and this has been copied to all senior high schools, regional district directors of the Ghana Education Service, banning all forms of political campaigning on the campuses. My colleague Joseph Opoku-Gakpo has a copy of this directive issued and signed by Professor Kwesi Opoku-Amankwa, Director of the Ghana Education Service. Joseph, what do we know about this directive?
It's an 8-paragraph directive, and it comes under the heading Political Activities on School Campuses, and it's to all the heads of senior high schools. Let me go through portions of that. It says, the attention of management has been drawn to a posting on social media by which a politician entered the Timpani Senior High School in the Upper East region and sought to undermine the office and person of His Excellency the President of the Republic, as well as undermine the implementation of the free senior high school program and the related double-track system. Management condemns that act in the strongest of terms and wishes to remind all school authorities that under the rules, regulations, and conventions of the service, school campuses are not available to politicians for campaigning purposes, and indeed, no circumstance should a school campus be made available to any politician for political activities. And then the notice goes on. Any head of school or official of the service who violates this will be sanctioned. Further, heads of schools are reminded that they are responsible for whatever happens on their school premises, and they will be held strictly liable for any such happening. And then they go on to address the specific issue of the Timpani Senior High School.
But apparently there's also another incident at Wupuli SHS, and in fact, other schools in the northern part of the country. What is the GS saying they will do about these cases?
Well, they say that those particular incidents, they are being thoroughly investigated, and that the heads of the two schools, that's the Timpani Senior High School and the Wapuli Senior High School, they've been directed to submit a full report on the matter through their respective regional directors to the Office of the Director General by Thursday, October 11, 2018. But in the interim, the Upper East Regional Director has been asked to take over the administration of the Timpani Senior High School from the current head, who has been asked to step aside pending the conclusion of investigations into this particular matter.
Okay, Joseph, I'm grateful for bringing us the details in this particular directive. And this is copied to the Minister of Education, Minister of State, and also the Deputy Minister, the General Education, also is copied to the Chairman of the GS Council. Thankfully, we've just been joined on the line by Professor Kwesi Opoku-Amankwa. Prof, thank you for your time here on Top Story. We lost him on the line there. Let's see if we can get him back and put a few questions to him about this directive that has been circulated to all schools across the country. We will be hearing in detail from the president, the former president, John Dramani Mahama, who has been speaking about this today. But we can go on the phone lines and speak to Professor Kwesi Opoku-Amankwah, who signed this directive. Prof, thank you for time here on Top Story. Hello, Prof.
I can hear you. Yes.
Thank you very much for time here on Top Story. So this directive, from what I understand, is a reiteration of an existing policy?
Yes, please.
Well,
anyway, good evening, and how are you?
We are great. We are grateful that you joined us, and we are good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I'm asking to explain to us, this, from what I understand, is a reiteration of an existing policy, and what is that policy exactly?
Okay. So thank you and good evening once again. Now, the constitution of the country enjoins anyone who wants to be part of any association or group to do so. But at the same time, we also have rules and regulations based on where we find ourselves. When you come into the public service generally, we all know for a fact that if you're a public servant, for example, and you want to do politics, you want to go and do partisan politics, at a point you have to resign your position and go. In our offices in the public service, which GES is part, irrespective of our political leanings and coloration and interests and all that, we are not supposed to be doing politics openly in our class, in our offices. And this is where we even have elderly people who have the right to join groups and associations that they want. Now, when we come into our schools, the school is meant for teaching and learning. And we want, as much as possible, all the activities that goes on there will relate to teaching and learning and improving the outcomes of the children, especially in the pre-tertiary schools. Realize that, yes, there could be pupils or students who are 18 years and above to vote, but the large majority of them are below that age. And we expect that the environment will be immune from politicization so that they will have that conducive environment to be learning.
You raise an important point which we've heard today counted, which is that if there are students on the SHS campus who are 18 and above, yes, shouldn't that open the door then for those who want to attract their votes to go in there and preach to them?
Evans, I believe you listened to me carefully. I started off by saying that in our offices in the public service, there are 18 years and above. The rules and regulations, the codes of ethics that bind us working in the public services does not allow people to come into our offices and campaign to us. So, and here we are talking of all people who are virtually above 18 years. But the rules and regulations of the country, the Constitution, the public service regulations, etc., they do not allow us at that level for people to come from elsewhere to come and do campaigning in our offices. Should we allow that to be going on in our classrooms? Because there are people who are 18 years and above.
This particular regulation you point to, is this something that all heads of the senior high schools and their teachers are aware of and signed on to?
Every teacher is aware of. When you take the Code of Ethics of the Ghana Education Service, which has recently been revised and officially signed by the chairman of council and also witnessed by the unions that we have, it is stated in there. Unfortunately, I'm not in Accra, as I told you much earlier on. So I can't give you the specific quote, but it is stated in there. When you take the NAT, for example, if you take their code of ethics and their guidelines, it is also stated in there. As an individual, you have every right to be doing your politics and belong to your association, and nobody will prevent you from doing that. But your rights and your activities in a given association should not go into the level where it will affect the sanctity of the school. Now, the students who are above 18, after school or during holidays and other things, they want to attend programs, political programs, and do whatever they want to do. No one will have any challenge with them. Because once you allow that, we may have a situation where one group will be countering the other on campuses, and that may cause a lot of challenges for us.
Because you've raised the existence of this rule, I need to ask, we've seen before this recent controversy, particularly 2015, 2016, especially in the wake of the current government's proposed free SHS policy when they were in opposition, we saw leading members of the current party, sometimes even the vice president and the president, in their regional tours, passing through schools and making their case there. Some say that point to, if this has existed all the time, why were they allowed to do that back then? Isn't that a point to some double standards today?
Well, that doesn't. If in the past those things were not checked, this time around they are being checked. But that doesn't prevent us from not doing the right thing. And if you have noticed, all the statements that we have issued, we have not narrowed into any particular party. For that reason, we are not so much interested in party A or party B, but the key thing is that we should try as much as possible to ensure that the children are not involved in these things. And around this time, really, what politicking are we doing that we should be involving them in these things, And sometimes some of these things, if you don't take care, it creates a lot of challenge for us. But now, as we speak, yes, we have suspended the head, and we are investigating the issue. And once we are done with it, if there is a need to take some sanctions, we will surely do that.
The head spoke to us over the weekend and says he wasn't there. He wasn't informed. He didn't know about it. He also saw it like everybody else on social media. And so it's unfair, he believes, to be the person taking the fall for what happened.
Well, I didn't listen to the head, and I wouldn't want to also answer him directly on that. But once you are the head of the school, the school is under your jurisdiction. Whether you are in school or you are out of school, whatever happens in there, it's something that you are responsible and you are answerable to everything. And it's not only for heads of schools. Once you are the head of an institution or an organization, the buck stops with you. There may be genuine reasons, there may be good excuses, but the buck stops with you.
You talk about violation of these ethical codes come with sanction. We know he's been suspended. What are the sanctions applied? What are the sanctions attached to these rules and regulations if it's violated?
Well, if it's violated, the disciplinary committee will look into it, and then the extent of violation will determine the kind of sanction that should go with it.
Okay, very finally, just before you go, you've touched on the fact that this has always been there in existence, and that the fact that the GS and the PAS didn't implement it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. But because you are the current head, is this something that GS is going to entrench, I guess? Because campaigning will not stop. Politicians will remain politicians. And as we've heard the former president say, he doesn't see any reason why campaigning shouldn't happen on the campuses. What is it that the GS is doing right now to make this something that will stand the test of time? and not something that's just going to be implemented in the short while because of political convenience.
We have issued a statement, a directive actually, to all the schools through their regional and district directors. And we expect that they will try as much as possible to comply with the directives. As and when it happens and it comes into our attention, we will crack the whip.
I'm grateful that you join us. Professor Opoku Amankwa is the Director General of the Ghana Education Service, speaking to us about the enforcement of what he says is an existing regulation in the Code of Conduct for teachers in the senior high schools across the country. But are the heads and the teachers in these schools aware of this existing policy that is being enforced today? We'll be speaking to NAGRA shortly, but I wanted to listen to former President John Dramani Mahama speaking about this today. He believes that the campuses should be open for political campaigning because the NPP did so when they were in opposition and selling their free SHS concept.
And sometimes we take cheap political advantage. Me, I'm not a person who likes to take cheap political advantage. Recently, I was coming in Northern Region, and students had closed from one of the community day schools, and they were going home. And so they blocked my car on the road. I didn't go into the school. They blocked my car. And then they said, "Oh, Mr. President, we just wanted to thank you for our school." I said, "Oh, great, good. I hope everything is okay." He says, "No, we have problems." Then I said, "Oh, I'm sure government will solve them. And just study hard and make your parents proud." I gave a very encouraging message. And then I went on my way. The next time I see, he says, nobody should go into schools and do what and what. Who went into schools more than somebody? We were in government. And there was somebody, he was always in the schools and doing plain politics. And yet we never sacked any headmaster. We never sacked any teacher because you have gone into a school. Then one of our aspirants for executive position goes to a school and they show him how bedbugs have chewed him. The students show how bedbugs have chewed them and has a discourse with them, and you sack. You suspend the headmaster. You should hand over. You are investigating him. Investigating him for what? Investigating him for what? The schools have children who are 18 years and above, and they vote. And in our time in office, we allowed the opposition to go into the schools because they are voters in the schools. But that is the problem with MPP. They are highly intolerant. Highly intolerant.
And that is the former president speaking in somewhere in the Northern Region today about this issue. Let's speak to the vice president of NAGRA, the National Association of Graduate Teachers. A lot of their members teach in these senior high schools. Jacob Anaba joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Anaba, thank you for your time here on Top Story. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir, Evans.
Thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. Let me ask you, we just heard from the GES director about the directive that has gone round, but he says that this directive is simply a reiteration of an existing regulation. In fact, he says it's part of your code of conduct that all teachers and heads sign on to. Are you aware of this?
Thank you very much, Evans, and greetings to your listeners. As far as we are concerned, this was a directive that existed after 1992 Constitution was promulgated. It came late after the Constitution took off, and we were using a code of conduct which was in existence for all this while. The last one we signed was in July. That has not been circulated yet. And that code of conduct is not in the hands of the teachers and heads as we speak. Because the last time we met, we agreed that we, the unions, were going to make copies and distribute to our members. That has not been done. So to be fair to our members, teachers, and heads, they do not have this new code of conduct.
But let me quickly clarify. That code of conduct did have in there explicitly written that political campaigning is forbidden on SHS campuses?
Yeah, as stated, I don't have the document with me, but if my memory serves me right, any activity that will interfere with the aims and objectives of the school should not be allowed on campus. That will include political activity.
Okay, but ignorance of the law, they say, is no excuse, and you say you represent.
I'm not holding brief for them.
Yeah,
but if you read this directive carefully, you look. It's more attacking the substance of the alleged statement made by the politician more than what the code says, because the directive didn't even quote part of the code to back its powers. Because if the Director General, you are making a directive which is part of our code, which you are aware of, you have to state that section of the code to buttress your points. It wasn't stated, but you are rather attacking the comment made by the politician allegedly against the sitting president, which to me, well, is good because the language may be very bad, but that is not the substance. That is not the issue. The issue is whether the politician was allowed by the head to undertake a political activity in the school. Our understanding, and according to the story we hear, the school is an open place. There is a road that passes through the school. It is not an enclosed place. Security-wise, it is very bad. So anybody that passes through that school can have interaction with the students. And a politician has taken advantage of. They did not write to the headmaster asking for permission to undertake this activity, and the headmaster sanctioned. So why are you making the headmaster liable for such an activity?
Well, I put that question to the director, and he says, well, as the head of the school, whatever happens, whether you are there or in your absence, you have to take responsibility. And that is why he says...
I agree. I don't have a problem. But first of all, let's listen to his side. Why do you suspend him immediately when you have not heard his side?
Isn't the suspension to allow for investigations to happen?
No, of course, first of all, you have to get a report. He has not even given you a report. So based on what are you suspending him? PSA.
So you're opposed to the suspension?
That is, I mean, at the last CHAS conference in Kumasi, my president, Nj Kabono, made that statement emphatic that the directorate, the ministers, or the minister, for that matter, powers that be, do not need to run to the media to make such pronouncements. And when we have a laid-down procedure
to follow. And very quickly, so what is it that NAGRAD intends to do about this?
Oh, it is simple. We have asked our regional secretariat to investigate. We also get our side of the story. The committee, as the director has indicated, will be set out and will be part of that committee. And whatever comes out will be part of the deliberation.
So let me ask you quickly, on the general policy of no political activity on the campuses, is NAGRAD in support of that policy?
I cannot speak for NAGRAD now because we have not taken a position on
it. No, but I thought you said you signed on to that latest code of conduct.
That is other activities that is against the... You see, when we talk about politics are in many forms. Politics are in
I'm talking about partisan politics. Yes.
Very good.
Are you...
So for example, if the president writes to the school that he wants to come to the school, and then he starts to make campaign on the platform of the school, is it politics? Is it against the rules? You see, in our jurisdiction, we have to define things very well. We have to develop, because we have IPAC, that is the Inter-Party Advisory Committee. They have to set the rules. You see, the headmasters have been put at a corner.
No, but
they cannot defend themselves.
But as a teacher yourself, the question is a simple one. GES, by this directive, says you're reiterating the point. They've banned all forms of partisan political campaigning on campuses. Are you in support of that or not?
Yeah, I'm in support of that. I'm grateful.
That's the vice president of. Thank you very much, sir. I can hear you, sir. Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Top Story. That's the vice president of NAGRAT speaking to us today about this latest directive that has come in from the GES. I want to quickly go onto the phone lines and speak to the chairman of the Education Committee, the vice chair, the ranking member rather, on the Education Committee in Parliament as this policy gets formulated and implemented in the coming days going to the 2020 elections. Let's speak to Peter Nochu, who joins us on the telephone line right now. Mr. Nochu, thank you for your time here on Top Story. Hello, Mr. Nochu.
Yes, I'm on the line.
Thank you for your time. Now, we just had the directive that reiterated by the GS director that what happened with the Timpani SHS is against the rules. We just had a confirmation from NAGRA that they signed on to a recent code of conduct which bans all forms of activity which is not in keeping with the core mandate of the schools. And he defines political activity as one of those. And in fact, he says he's in support of the current directive to ban all political activity on partisan political activity. Where do you stand on that conversation?
Thank you very much, Evans, and good evening to you. Yeah, I know that there has been some directive to heads of second cycle institutions as to allowing political activities on their campuses. But that directive or those directives have not been carried to the letter. But what is happening currently is quite different from the instructions given, because with the suspension of the headmaster of Timpani Secondary School, this is a situation where the headmaster has not given instructions or approval to anybody to come and address students on the campus. The Joshua Kamba team took advantage of the poor conditions in the school as they were passing through. And then when they made the students, they were able to talk with them. So our concern as a minority on this issue is that why do you suspend the headmaster when you have not even listened to him? And we know that in this country, many a time when people are asked to go on suspension, interdiction in recent times, it finally leads to dismissal.
Well, but the director says that they only did that. The director says they only did that. The director says they only did that to allow for investigations.
To the side of the headmaster, because he has not, according to information, he was not even in the school when the event occurred. So, although the instructions are there, he has not violated the instructions. So, rather hold responsible those who went there to talk to the students. That
will be members of your own political party.
Yes,
are you condemning the actions of Mr. Kamba? And in fact, the former president himself was seen in a vehicle also talking to these young SHS students.
No, I am not condemning his action, because the situation was created by the inability of education authorities to make sure that no access to students was given to anybody. So the situation presented itself for him to use it as temporary. So what I'm saying is that invite the accused person or the team and find out from them why they did that, and not the poor headmaster who did not know anything. The thing happened behind him. Then you are holding him responsible.
Okay, so just for clarity, you want the focus, the condemnation should be on the party folks who went to campaign in the schools and not the headmaster.
No, I am. The issue I'm talking about is not an issue of condemnation.
Yeah, but you say that
from the team.
Which team?
What happened?
The NDC team?
Joshua Kamba team, what happened?
Yeah, but we saw the video.
Why did they stop in the school? Do you say it?
Yeah.
And find out from them. Not the headmaster who was not there.
I'm grateful that you joined us. That is the ranking member on the Education Committee in Parliament, and we will be interrogating shortly later on Newsnight what the civil society make of the policy that bans political activity on the campuses of the senior high schools. And John Mahama is opposed to that because he believes there are people on the campus, students who are 18 years and above, and so you should allow them. That debate later on Newsnight. Newsnight starts right now.